My name's Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Hello everyone, I'm Vicki Fennell, and I'm a resident of the Blue Hills neighborhood, longtime resident of Blue Hills neighborhood. And I'm here today having a conversation with attorney Suzann Beckett, who is a Democrat running as a petitioning candidate on Row D in this coming election. And I want to tell you share a little bit about Suzann with you. She has devoted her practice to helping individuals, families, and small businesses in the greater Hartford area and across the state. And her firm actively represents clients in a variety of subject areas. Her passion and love has been those matters relating to the family. She has a strong history of assisting clients with wills, trusts, probate, trust administration, conservatorships, and special needs planning. She's very knowledgeable in areas such as real estate matters, mortgage modifications, foreclosure defense, and bankruptcy. Ms. Beckett is a graduate of the University of Hartford and received her JD cum laude from the University of Connecticut. And she is the co-author of two books entitled Giving, Philanthropy for Everyone, and Love, Money, and Control, written for the lay persons. Now, those are very interesting titles. So
thank you, Vicki.
So Suzann, who are you? And why do you want to be Hartford's next probate court judge?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think it's a natural progression for me. As you mentioned, I have a law firm called Estate Planning Law Center, and we handle all matters relating to estate planning, pretty much run the gamut. It could be as simple as a name change, could be something more complex, guardianships, terminations of parental rights, everything that's included in that. I also have a separate law firm called Beckett Law LLC, and we have two separate sets of staff. And that law firm really concentrates on bankruptcy, foreclosure defense, and some real estate. And although it's not pertinent to this job directly, I think it's going to be very helpful to me going forward, because many of the people that come in to the probate court are fairly poor. A lot of them are struggling. Sometimes you get a situation where the husband and wife own a house together. Maybe the mortgage is only in one person's name and that person passes away. It can be devastating. And the law just recently changed, giving the surviving spouse some additional rights. But I think having that background over a number of years and helping so many people in the community, more in the north end than other parts of the city, but really all across the city, will be a big help to me.
Now, you have a private practice. You have the Estate Planning Law Center, which is a very interesting resource center especially for people who might not really know exactly a lot about wills and trust and and other things of that nature. And there's still a little confusion, I think, about the probate court. People, the functions. I think mostly people think that, oh, now my aunt or someone has passed away, and that's where we go to the probate court. But the probate court, from what I understand, does a lot more than that. And so
It does. And the jurisdiction has been expanded, and I don't think people fully understand how much it does. And unlike some of the suburban towns like Glastonbury, Greenwich, Stamford, the percentage of the work that actually involves transferring assets from one generation to another in Hartford is fairly small. We're really more of a community court, although it's not called that. We do the social services. DCF has an office right inside the courthouse. So we deal with a lot of family matters. There's about 500 children's matters heard every year. Those could be termination of parental rights, removal of guardianship, transfer of guardianship to a grandparent or, whoever. Removal of life support goes through the probate court. It really has a broad jurisdiction. It also, we have more conservatorships in the city of Hartford than any of the other courts. And a conservatorship, just to step back, is really for somebody who might be our age, but for whatever reason they can't make medical decisions, they can't make financial decisions. So the court can appoint someone. You can request voluntarily to name someone. I could ask to have you named. Or more often, if the person isn't really capable of that, the court will appoint somebody for them. And that person then stands in the original person's shoes and makes those medical decisions, financial decisions to help that person hopefully stay home and maintain maximum personal liberty.
Wow, those are some really heavy duty decisions there, and that's
so important when you're
very
talking about
important.
taking away somebody's life, their biological relationship with another person in the sense of a termination of parental rights. Really very serious issues. So you mentioned the name of my firm, which is Estate Planning Law Center, and
Yes.
we picked that name very purposefully because we wanted it to be a center where people could come for information. We have alliances with financial advisors, different social workers, different people in the community, geriatric therapists, different people that can help my clients and even people that aren't our clients. So we really love to educate people and make sure that they know what their rights are and make sure that they know where to get help if they need help, because it's not that easy in the city of Hartford to find out who's offering the help that you need. And I'm hoping to take that philosophy to the probate court if I'm elected, and to make the probate court also a resource center for people. And at least initially, it would be on matters directly related to the probate court. Judge Killian, who is the predecessor in this position, as you know, was in for 32 years. He did some of that with especially grandparent adoptions, and we would like to expand upon that into more areas, get some other area attorneys in to do lunch and learns, to really just educate the public. The judge, him or herself, is limited in how much they can have direct contact because of impartiality,
Right.
but we can certainly facilitate a area, a building, where people can come, people can learn, and there's information.
So basically, you see your role as the next probate court judge as an expansion of what Judge Killian has done, because of course he was on for 32 years, and in that time, and he did a fabulous job.
Fabulous job.
But within that time, technology kicked in. We have social media, and so. Are these areas that you feel that you could possibly do a little bit more?
Definitely. I mean, for anybody who's lived here a long time, they know that when Judge Killian took over, the court was in shambles. There were a lot of issues going on. And he single-handedly made that court a very professional, very well-respected court with a real emphasis on customer service. And those are old-fashioned values, which he has done a stellar job. But it is true. I think there's a little room for expansion. I think there's a little room to improve upon some of the things he's done. And also, as you may know, there's 54 courts in the state of Connecticut. Hartford, it's the busiest court. But as a practicing attorney, unlike Judge Killian, I have the opportunity to go to all these different courts and have cases heard in these different courts and appear before different judges. And so in my mind, I've been making a little list of best practices and how other courts do things, and that maybe we could bring back to Hartford and improve a little bit more.
That's great.
You know, I don't think we do enough with translations. There's a lot of people in the city of Hartford where English is not their first language. The hearing may still need to be in English, but just like when you go to Webster Bank, there's people that speak 5 or 6 or 7 languages. I think we could do a better job of communicating and teaching what needs to be done, the steps, the resources in other languages. And definitely, as you mentioned, with the computers, you know, hopefully at some point, and I've talked to probate court administration about this, let people file their documents online like you can do in the bankruptcy court and the regular superior court. Let's put more information online so when they're home at 2 a.m. and they can't sleep because they're worried about something, they can research it and get that information without having to wait until 9 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you're willing to incorporate what's working in other courts with what you've seen from other judges and bringing that to Hartford, because that's important. You know, what may be working in another town could also work in Hartford.
That's right.
And maybe what's working in Hartford is not necessarily could work in another town. But I think it's important that, courts and institutions like that are constantly growing.
Right.
And so that's an important piece of that.
Right. And, every judge that I've practiced in front of is very bright. A judge kind of acts as the office manager in the probate court. So there are some that are very, very organized and some that are a little less organized. But taking the best of those ideas and bringing them back here, I think really could help the city of Hartford.
And I think someone with your experience too. I mean, how many times have you tried? How many cases have you done about in
I would hesitate to take a guess, but there's been many.
Right.
I've been doing litigation for 28 years.
So there is a certain amount of preparation.
Right.
And you don't want to, the biggest no-no is to waste the court's time.
Right.
Yeah,
That's very true. But at the same time, I think we need to be cognizant of the people's time.
Yes.
So one of the issues that has been an ongoing issue in Hartford is, depending on how the cases are heard and depending who's on time and who's not on time, they may hear a very lengthy case at 10 o'clock in the morning that might take 2 hours. There's only one courtroom, only one judge, so that means all of the other people that were there that morning are waiting in the waiting room for 2 hours for their case to be called. And that's a problem, because if you're taking time off from work, you're losing pay. If you're paying an attorney, which many people do go without attorneys, but many people do have attorneys, you're paying an attorney a couple $100s an hour to really just sit in the lobby. So
Right.
I think we need to be cognizant of both sides, certainly of the court's time, but also of the people that are coming before the court, and to make it as efficient as possible.
Right. Terrific. One of the other things that people, and I think this is, again, goes back to your estate planning law center, is the importance of having certain documents, the wills. There are many people who don't have wills.
That's right.
And that creates a situation that is very complex, I would say, for the people who are left behind, the survivors. And so, if I'm understanding this correctly, once the person dies, if there's no will, it automatically goes to probate. Is that correct?
Well, if you pass away with anything in your name, whether or not you have a will, it goes through probate.
Okay.
So people misunderstand a will.
Good. I'm glad that I mentioned that. Good. Okay.
And that's
So
what,
anyway,
what you're saying is it's a common misconception. One of the reasons that you can create a trust, and you don't need a lot of money to have a trust, is that things are in the name of the trust. The trust doesn't die. It doesn't have an end date. Or if it does, it could be 100 years from now. So if you have everything you own in a trust, or everything you own jointly held with someone else, you don't necessarily need to go through probate other than to file a few pieces of paper. People write wills thinking, well, now I've taken care of this, I don't need to go through probate, but it's actually a will you can almost think of as a letter to the probate judge as to what you want to have happen. Because if you have assets in your name, it has to go through probate. There's no other way to get it to the next generation. And there's a lot of issues with that, because if you have a will, then at least you've said you want things to go to X, Y, and Z. A lot of times people don't sign wills because they don't think they have quote unquote enough. But if you have even a car in your name, your loved ones are going to have to go through probate. And one of the advantages sometimes in the city of Hartford, and in many cities, is there's a lot of people that aren't married, and maybe men have, or women have, children with a couple of different people. So particularly with a man, if somebody passes away and they don't have a will that says, I have 3 children, John, Jane, and George, sometimes the court has to appoint an attorney or an investigator to go out and see if there's other children, and that can be a huge waste of resources. And that happens, and sometimes there are other children found, and then that can be a whole nother set of issues.
Wow. It does get very complicated. Indeed.
And then another issue that people tend to think is that their spouse will get everything. But if you don't have a will, your spouse doesn't necessarily get everything under Connecticut state law. So the state of Connecticut has a statute that says what happens if you pass away and you don't have a will. You know, an X percentage may go to your parents, X percentage may go to kids, depending on what the familial relationships are. So my personal opinion is it's always better to write down what you want, because it's probably better than what the legislature has decided for you.
Very good. And we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Vicki Fennell, a longtime Blue Hills resident, and we're resuming our conversation here today with attorney Suzann Beckett, who is a candidate for Hartford Probate Court judge on Row D, a petitioning candidate, correct?
That's right. Thank you, Vicki.
And so this election is coming up on Tuesday, November 3rd, and it has been an interesting election all around, starting with the primary.
Yes.
Now is the final countdown, 2 weeks ago. And so obviously there are 3 candidates that are running for Hartford Probate Court judge. It's the first time in 32 years that we're having this opportunity to elect someone new. And at this point, each one of you come with different qualifications, different experiences, but you obviously are the most experienced one. And so I'd have to ask you to make the closing argument now, why you as opposed to the others?
Well, you're right, Vicki. This is a really interesting election in a number of ways, because it is the first time this position has been contested in, I think, 28 years. I think there may have been Judge Killian's first term, he may have had somebody contest his re-election. But since then, it's been smooth sailing. He's done a great job. There was no reason for anybody to look for anyone else. But this time, we do have 3 candidates. All are law school graduates, which is the only technical requirement for the position. But you have to go back a little bit to what we talked about earlier today. The types of decisions that a probate court judge is going to make. They're really, really serious decisions that are made in that court, and they directly impact the person, they impact the family, and they can impact even generations to come, depending on what decisions are made. So, for example, a judge may have to make a decision to commit someone to a mental health facility. They may make a decision to authorize electroshock therapy. Those are really tough decisions and require a lot of background knowledge before you can just make a decision like that will so directly impact the family. We talked a little bit earlier about termination of parental rights. When you take a child away and sever that familial relationship from a legal standpoint, and they're legally strangers after that point, that is a huge, huge deal, and it causes emotional repercussions regardless of what the reasoning was. When you take a child away because they can't live with a parent who's being neglectful or abusive, it's still a hugely emotional thing for that child, because they will gravitate towards their biological parent even if the circumstances are horrific.
And even I noticed that we hear in the news people are terminating, they're removing life support, and people just think that the family is making that decision.
And if an older person or any person really hasn't set out in writing with the proper procedures whether they would or would not want to be kept alive artificially, if their brainwaves are flat, and if the family can't make that decision, which is very common, you've got a larger family, there's always going to be someone that disagrees. Well, that family then, or the hospital, is going to go to the court and ask the court to make that decision. That's a huge decision to make. You are removing life support from this person with only one place for it to go. The person will pass away. So all of those things really require a tremendous amount of experience, a tremendous knowledge of the law of the state of Connecticut, and sometimes even beyond Connecticut, because not every case has been heard before, not every situation has been visited before. So
And
often,
different states do.
but if you go to all 50 states,
Right.
almost everything has been heard somewhere, and that's called precedent, and you bring it back and you apply it to the Connecticut state law and you make a decision. And I think the fact that for the past 28 years I've been doing exactly this type of case, and I've been going in front of various judges asking for permission to remove life support, asking for termination of rights, defending against either one of those things and any multitude of other issues, gives me a really unique ability to know the issues, know what is of concern for the families, and also really to know the court's thinking and how they're going to view the situation. So that allows me to then go as the next probate court judge to the other side of the table, sit down and really have a huge leg up on what's coming before me, how to make a decision accurately, how to make the right decision, and how to be able to sleep at night knowing that I did the right thing. And I think all that's really, really important.
Well, the experience matters. Is really what's at stake here.
Right.
It is important that Hartford has someone that they can count on.
Right. And a few people have told me, well, everybody's an attorney, so does it really matter? But I think some of the things we're talking about explains why it really does matter. If you are a corporate attorney, you could be at the top of your game, but the skills you've learned over those 25 or 30 years to get to the top of your game are going to be very different skills and a very different knowledge set than someone like me who's worked in the probate court arena. And these are complex, very challenging issues that you're not going to pick up in a day or two at the law library.
So if voters want additional information about you and your candidacy, or even they want to participate in your campaign, where should they go?
We have 2 weeks to go. We're very much still accepting volunteer applications. Would love to have people come volunteer. We have a place for you no matter what your skill set is. You can go to my website, which is beckettforprobate.com, or I have a Facebook page, which is also Beckett for Hartford Probate Judge, with a lot of information in both of those places, both about my experience and types of jobs that are available. So right now we're still going door to door. We're still doing some literature drops. We're holding some meet and greets, and we would love to have the public involved with that.
This is great. This is great. So again, we want to just reiterate that Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. The hours are from 6 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m.
Correct.
There is still time, I believe, for people who have not registered to vote to still register to vote.
I'm not sure what the exact deadline is, but it's about a week prior to the election.
Right.
And another thing I would like to mention, what has come up repeatedly in different areas of the city, is that people think that because they've had a felony conviction that they cannot vote, and that is not the case. If you have completed your sentence, probation, fines, whatever you may have been ordered to do, and you're completely done, you can re-register to vote just like you did when you were 18. And I think that's important. The city of Hartford does not have great voter participation. I think we had about 10,000 people vote in the Democratic primary out of 40,000 plus or minus registered Democrats in a city of 140,000. We'd love to get those numbers up. So
Obviously.
we're asking that everyone vote. If you're registered to vote, if you're independent, if you're unaffiliated, if you're Republican, please come out and vote on November 3rd. Polls are open for a good long time.
Right.
Absentee ballots are also still available. You can call for an application, or you can call my office at 860-385-4045, and we will be happy to get you an application, which you can then send into the town clerk, and they'll send you out a ballot. So if you're disabled, if you're elderly, if you won't be in town on November 3rd, you can still vote by mail.
And it's all very easy to do.
Very easy.
Very easy. You just fill out the information, who you're voting for, and they have separate envelopes, and they're color-coded so that you can't get confused.
Right. I think there's some feeling in the city that there's been fraud in the past, and they don't want to vote by absentee ballot. But I would like to assure people that I think most of these issues have been resolved. We actually have a state monitor overseeing our elections this year, and so I've not heard any reports from anyone that there were any issues with absentee ballots in the September primary, and I'm quite confident they'll be handled appropriately in November.
Fabulous, fabulous. And if there's anything else that you'd like to say at this point?
Well, I guess the only thing I would like to say is I know, it's human nature. Some people might want to vote for a favorite son or a favorite daughter, maybe somebody that they went to school with, maybe somebody who their parents worked together. But please keep in mind that the political process is really separate from who the best probate court candidate would be. The probate judge, once elected, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, has to put all their personal views to the side. If they're friends with somebody, they have to put that to the side, or even recuse themselves and not hear those cases, because it's essential that the probate judge be independent. And as somebody who's worked in the city for 28 years, I have clients in the north, in the south, in the west, in downtown, all throughout the city. And I think I've got a history very well known of being fair with everyone, being compassionate with everyone, and having the knowledge that I can make the decisions that need to be made accurately and competently. So, yes, to everyone that's watching this show, I'm asking that you vote 1D, which is where you will find me. And I'm also asking, if you have time, to please call my campaign at 860-385-4045 and help. We'll have some fun for the last couple weeks.
Yeah, campaigns can usually be a little bit dizzying at the end, but
very much so.
Many hands make light work.
That's right.
So let's make the work light and get involved in Suzann's campaign here. One of the other things I wanted to mention really briefly is that there are supervisory aspects to managerial aspects to the probate court judge.
That's right.
And so, I would assume that anybody who comes into that position has to be a very good manager. And you bring some supervisory skills, managerial skills.
Right, I probably should have mentioned that. But yes, the Hartford Probate Court has about 10 of its own employees. And then it also manages the Children's Court, which has another 10 plus employees. And then, as I mentioned, DCF is on premises. So I think one of the things that will help me a great deal is that I've had my own practice for a long time, 20 years. Prior to that, I was a supervisor at Hartford Hospital. Prior to that, I helped manage my parents' farm, which is the old cider mill in Glastonbury, which was a huge business. So I've got many years of experience in managing staff, and I think that that's critical, again, to maximize the efficiencies, make some of the changes that I would like to make.
Right.
And the scheduling in a court like this, where there's 50 hearings heard a week, is huge. And so whoever runs this court needs to be a very, very organized person. And I think over the years, I have proven that I've developed those skills.
Yes, there's a lot of coordination involved here.
It really is,
Yes.
yeah.
So I would say that that's about it at this point. I think the voters have gotten to know you a little bit better. They're certainly coming away with a better understanding of what a probate court judge does. And I think at this point they can probably make a very informed decision as to who should be Hartford's next probate court judge. And so now it's just really up to the voters to make the decision on November 3rd of who is the best candidate for this position, and review all of the qualifications of all of the candidates when you do make that decision. But of course, Suzann is by far the most qualified for the position. Of course, I'm partial to Suzann.
Well, I'm partial to Suzann, but I can say, I've got the 28 years experience doing the exact type of law that the judge handles, and I can say that none of the other candidates have that kind of qualifications.
Right. So the decision is now in the hands of the voters on November 3rd, and I have confidence that they will make the best choice for our city as we move forward into this next phase.
Thank you.
Thank you.